So it's just us. No one is in here, right?
No one's in there.
All right, great. So I'm just going to start talking, pretending like people are. And if people show up, people show up. If not, they don't.
Absolutely.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, hello. So glad to see you well. My name is Raymond. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of mxdwn, known as mxdwn.com. Coming today in a different medium, after many years of almost exclusively working in the world of the written word. Just experimenting a little bit. Just trying to say hi in a different way. For about 20 years, me and an army of writers and contributors and volunteers has been publishing content in the realms of music, movies, games, and television. Covering everything in news, reviews, features, interviews, photos. At first, known most as a music magazine, about 7-8 years ago we expanded into the world of movies and games and television, always aimed at being a journalistic enterprise. As a point of purpose and manifesto, we always existed, trying to bring the best of entertainment news to the world. The objective was to be a little less than snobby and a little bit more thinking about what you might need. A little bit more thinking about what you might need to know to help best inform you in terms of how you make your decisions about what you purchase or what you spend your time on. Now, our focus was always in terms of communicating through the written word. And now with the world changing the way it is, we wanted to experiment a little bit, try to bring something to you in a different medium. So here today, I'm going to tell a little story, recap a few headlines, and this might become a part of a regular series of content. For now, this is just an experiment. We make no assumptions that this is going to be a set format forever. We may eventually have special guests. We may have interviews. We may have other people from mxdwn come and join, say hi, and talk about things. But largely, this is just a platform to help bring information to you in a different way. So today, I thought I might start telling the story basically in the genesis of what brought me to this path in the world in terms of having an entertainment magazine. When I was young, I was a pretty big music fan from a young age, but it was mostly kind of indoctrinated in the way that my parents were listening to music, which was classic rock. I came up at the time of Guns N' Roses, so Guns N' Roses and Poison and Motley Crue, Bon Jovi, things like that, were all that I was basically interested in. Now, if you found me somewhere in the age of 12 years old, you'd see a very awkward redheaded kid walking around with a combination of Chicago Bulls paraphernalia, activewear, and Randy Rhoads and Pantera shirts. I was very interested in music and learning how to play guitar, but I didn't know quite that much in the grand scheme of things. Now, every now and again, I would go and visit my cousin. My cousin was a few years older, quite a lot cooler than me, quite a lot less awkward. And he hung out with a pretty aggressive series of guys that were also in that batch of counterculture cool. Not the kind of counterculture that you see depicted in movies, not the kind of counterculture that you see where it's all happiness and easy. You're talking like rough men, guys that were super imposing, intimidating, kind of ready to fight, but they were all into heavy metal and they were all into very experimental, different music. So one time in my, hanging with my cousin in Wolcott in Connecticut, we went down to hang out with some of his friends, and here I am, skittish, squeamish, terrified in my own way, basically trying to find a way to be cool and not embarrass myself, where I felt like every man in that room was looking for any reason to jump down anybody's throat, to make fun of them, to basically bang on them, to make them feel small. And so squeamishly, I kind of quietly sat by, trying to make it through the moment. And effectively, the main guy, Joel was his name, whose house it was, really, really big into heavy metal and lots of different kinds of heavy metal. And he basically said somewhat emphatically, I'm going to put that Ministry record on. Now, for those of you that aren't big heavy music fans or industrial music fans, what he put forth was what we commonly know as Psalm 69, either the Symbols album or sometimes subtitled The Way to Succeed and The Way to Suck Eggs. This album was kind of Ministry's tour de force changeover moment between their earlier, more electronic industrial sound and the heavier metal, industrial metal strength that they've kind of become known as ever since, in the years since that time. Now, Psalm 69 is an incredibly aggressive and direct record. Me sitting there at roughly 13 years old, I think at this point, maybe 1993, listening to this record, it was a mind-opening experience. Al Jorgensen's approach to music was taking the syncopation and repetition of dance music and applying it with samples and heavy guitars
bass and drums. And it was basically like an enveloping crescendo. Now here I am, 13 years old, wearing some kind of awkward Chicago Bulls jacket, sitting there trying my best not to be afraid. And then here comes this thing through these, 70s style megawatt speakers, this ever voluminous sound. Now, those who know it would know the opening of that album to be the very famous song NWO, short for New World Order. And little by little, that song is kind of a stacking of layers, different other pieces as it gets heavier and more intense, until eventually it builds to the point where the song's main crescendo comes through a sample of the then president, George Herbert Walker Bush, when they recorded the album at least, speaking about what we are looking at as good and evil, right and wrong, a new world order. And as it builds to its climax, all the different pieces that Jorgensen has been slowly stacking up throughout this recording all come together all at once. And so in this massive analog speaker system, not like the speaker systems everybody's used to now, your Sonos speaker systems, your Bluetooth speaker systems, I mean, we're talking heavy wattage and power. Changed my life. Literally being there in that moment, experiencing that enveloping sound. For them, it might have been cool. This is angry. This is heavy. This is intense. Wow, this is exciting. For me, it was a testimonial to what was possible in art. How so much of what was music and art at that point, and of course things were rapidly changing in the wake of Nirvana's arrival and the grunge scene and the alternative scene's explosion, but that alone, so much of the music that came the 10 years before, at least as far as MTV and the mainstream were concerned, MTV dominating the mainstream in that time, was very banal in its own way. Kind of a set thing. Your song goes here, your hook goes here, your guitar solo goes there. You're going to have this kind of a thing with a guitar solo. You're going to have that kind of a dance song with a very simple, quick verse, chorus. Hearing NWO, and then of course the follow-up song, Just One Fix, which is equally intense, but about, heroin abuse, changed everything for me in terms of what was possible with sound, what you could do, how you could rethink the format. Now, I came from, in my younger years, before I got into classic rock and Guns N' Roses, very big into dance music. Used to listen to, in Connecticut, they had a station called 95.7, KISS FM. And I was very big into the very repetitious, kind of bombastic dance music sound. But to think that somebody could take that, combine that with the ferocity of metal, and somehow build this new thing out of it, that changed everything for me. Now, in the years that came after that moment, separate from that time trying to be cool around my cousin, the doors had been blown off. Everything changed from there. So from that moment on, my goal was to try to find as much different music as I possibly can. It happened slowly at first because, of course, coming from kind of a classic rock angle, I didn't know much about what other things could be. There were whole genres or subgenres or pockets of genres that I wouldn't get exposed to for a good 20 years after that point, largely because in Connecticut, most people weren't listening to them. But that's where the hunt began. Everything that I've tried to do in all the years of my adult life and everything that Mixdown has been as an extension of that was built from the need and the desire to try to find and surface more that was different. Whatever that was, whatever that meant, to try to boldly look for the things that people weren't paying attention to and just try to say, hey, here's something different. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't, but holy cow, there is a lot of different and special things out there. Now, I've encountered people now and again, perhaps from a juvenile mindset. And even recently, I think there was a party I went to where there was a person who said, there's no good music that came out between 1986 and 1991. And I had to laugh because never mind just those 5 years, but almost any section of any time, if you really look and you really think about it, there's so much that's good out there. And there's so much that's different and special. There's so much that's exciting and so much that's fun and fresh. It's all out there. And it's just that so much of the system, media, culture, or just what popular culture and acceptable conformity will allow, kind of shields us from it. tries not to expose it, tries to say, this is the pocket that we're comfortable with. This is what we want to surface to you. Here are the options we want to show you. All that I was ever trying to do, and all that Mixdown by extension of that has ever tried to do, is try to find those things that people aren't looking at and try to surface them as well. It isn't about trying to turn a blind eye to what is pervasively popular. It isn't about trying to ignore what's happening. Beyonce's popular, or Halsey is popular, Demi Lovato's popular. There's no reason that that's not relevant on some level. But it's also about trying to ask what's happening beyond the field of vision, as far as what the system at large wants us to know, wants us to hear. So consider this the origin, both for the story of Mixdown as a whole, and also the aim of this show, whatever form that it takes as it evolves, as it becomes something different over time, as we experiment with it in terms of format, in the aim of surfacing whatever we can about what's out there and what's good and what's exciting. Now, each week that we do this show, culled from everything that's happening across the world of music, movies, games, and television, I'm trying to do a brief recap of some major headlines. I don't aim to mean to have this be a giant dissection of the facts of a story, but depending on what happens and the significance of it, perhaps we'll speak more. Perhaps we may have experts or other people that can comment on it or extrapolate on it. But for now, just for the purposes of simplicity, here's a few things that made the rounds this week that we found interesting or exciting or cool. First of all, in the world of music, the FBI declassified a 270-page document that they had been tracking everything about Aretha Franklin for most of her life up until her death. In this, they were paying very close attention to her activism, but also her friendship at the time that he was alive with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Last night, literally last night, the 2022 Emmys took place. Great time and a great year for television. The major winners in the categories largely kind of went the way one might expect. For comedy, Ted Lasso took most of the major awards, including Best Actor for Comedy for Jason Sudeikis and Best Supporting Comedy Actor for Brett Goldstein. But then in the drama sector, Succession took top honors for Best Drama for the year. On another sadder note, England, the United Kingdom's monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, passed away at the incredible age of 96 years old. Now, while throughout her life, representative in a lot of different factions, as not necessarily everything that one band or another might like, in her passing, quite wonderfully, almost any band you can think of that shares origins with the United Kingdom, including many members of the Sex Pistols, had positive things to say in her passing, looking at her 70 years leading the United Kingdom and everything she did for the world and for kindness. Most recently, as we witnessed just the other night here in Los Angeles, Duran Duran did a tribute as a part of their show, headlining a 3-night stand, headlining the Hollywood Bowl. Over the weekend, Disney, the juggernaut powerhouse of movies and television that they are, they had their D23 event where they announced numerous different pieces of their TV shows, their movies, the different things that they're going to bring forth to the world. Most pertinently, the Thunderbolts kind of marvel their answer to the Suicide Squad. They announced that what I think a lot of people have been expecting, that the Thunderbolts were going to have their own movie, and it was going to star a bevy of different actors and actresses that have been slowly kind of been rolling out throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe, including Sebastian Stan reprising his role as a Winter Soldier, Florence Pugh playing Yelena Belova, David Harbour reprising his role from Black Widow as Red Guardian, Wyatt Russell portraying U.S. Agent as he did in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney+, Hannah John Kamen reprising her role as Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp, Olga Kurylenko reprising her role as Taskmaster, as it was from the Black Widow, and then also Julia Louis-Dreyfus playing Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, most likely leading the group. Then lastly, in the world of games, just recently announced, Ubisoft, one of the massive game producers in the AAA market, is going to be partnering exclusively with Netflix. In this, they're going to have 3 exclusive titles made entirely just for Netflix's mobile app on phones. No other devices will have these games, and they will only be accessible to people using the Netflix mobile app. Within them, one of them is going to be a new Assassin's Creed game. One of them will be a new edition of the title Valiant Hearts. And then one of them will be a new The Mighty Quest, a sequel to The Mighty Quest for Epic Loot. That's all for now for this first edition. Thanks for stopping by. We'll hopefully be doing this in regularity every week or multiple times a week as we go. But for now, this week is live. Thanks for joining us.